Daniel, why we need a title company in a real estate transaction, and what is what you guys do? What is a title company?
A title company is either a law firm or a licensed title company that's usually run by an attorney, which handles the closing process of every purchase. So what we're responsible for is holding the earnest money deposit, making sure the transaction goes smooth. We issue the title insurance on behalf of the buyer. We check all the property to make sure that the title search comes in well, the lien search is performed. We basically handle the whole transaction, making sure that the buyer receives the property free and clear of any defects or any problems that may arise in the future.
Okay, thank you. Let's say I'm a real estate agent and I signed a contract for sale. And when do I need to call you and say, hey, Daniel, this is a contract. When do I need to connect you and put you in a transaction?
So what makes us different from other title companies is that we're an attorney-owned and operated title company. So I always suggest to every agent that I work with that before you sign a contract, you send it to me for review. I do it for free. I don't charge anything. I give you any comments or ideas that I may have, and that way that alleviates any problems that you may have. So the best time to contact me is actually when you're preparing the offer to send to either the seller or the buyer, depending on who you're representing.
Okay. If the transaction going without the real estate agent, and I'm sure you had the cases, if it's only between buyer and seller, you're also handling the transaction, correct?
So yes, you don't need to be a real estate agent to work with us. We have buyers that find us on the internet that we get recommended to. Same thing with sellers. We represent sellers in their sales. We represent buyers that come together with a seller or find the property off market or find them without an agent. And we basically do the same process. We help them create the contract and then we help them close the deal.
You have an agent or you don't have an agent, you still need a title company to do the transaction and to close the deal.
Absolutely.
Daniel, let's talk about closing costs for the buyer and for the seller, because everybody is expecting there is a fee, but nobody knows what kind of fee to expect in a real estate transaction when you're purchasing a home or selling a home in Florida.
Right. So most closing costs are usually fixed. So a lot of people ask us, what do you charge? What do you don't charge? It all depends on who we're representing. If we're representing the seller, our costs are usually between $750 and $1,500. That's to represent the seller in a transaction, to make sure their interests are protected, and of course, we prepare everything that needs to be done for the seller. Of course, the fee can be higher depending on what kind of representation we're giving to the seller. On the buyer side, the fees are also pretty standard across the board. We charge anywhere between $750 to $1,500 for a closing fee, and it depends if you're buying a cash transaction, if you're getting loan financing. And then, of course, you have your title insurance, which is regulated by the state of Florida. It hasn't changed for 20 years, and it basically goes by the purchase price. So the higher the purchase price, the higher the insurance. There's a book. Anybody can go online. They can type in and see what my title insurance would be, and it's regulated by the state. So we don't make it up. We don't make it smaller. We don't make it higher.
Okay, so basically, this is if you are buying a house in Miami, in Florida, there is a fee, title insurance, fee to your company, and what else?
You have some miscellaneous fees. So obviously, you're going to have wire fees, courier fees. There's recording fees, but those are very minimal, and they range between maybe $75 to $150, and that's really it.
Let's say for $1 million. Dollar transaction, how much is approximately?
Oh, it depends. Cash or mortgage?
Mortgage.
Well, the mortgage, it's tough. So on $1 million transaction, a closing fee and title insurance will run you about $4,000 to $5,000.
Now let's talk about crypto closings. Everyone is saying, yes, I do a crypto transaction. Yes, it's no problem. Daniel, you as a title company, do you do a crypto transaction?
Absolutely. We've done multiple crypto closings in the past 2 years since it's become legal. So we're allowed to do crypto transactions. We have permission from our underwriters. The process is not what people think it is. It's not like this secret, I send you the crypto, you take the Bitcoin, you give it to the seller. It doesn't work that way. Our industry is very regulated. So it doesn't matter how you pay. Everybody needs to know where that money is coming from. So we while we accept crypto, the way it really works is we work with a third-party provider that vets the person who is going to be sending the crypto. And if that person clears all the check marks that you have to go through, you have to make sure you're not on the list of sanctions. That means you have to source your funds. Then they take your crypto, they convert it into US dollars, and then they put it into our account. So every time you read in the newspaper, a guy buys $30 million house with crypto, yeah, he did. But at the end of the day, that crypto was converted into dollars and the dollars were given to the seller. So ultimately, the seller receives 99% of the time, the seller receives US money. So the seller doesn't even know that the buyer is paying crypto. So we work with a very reputable company that'll accept the crypto. They convert the money, put it into our account, and closing goes through like it was before.
If buyer and seller agreed to accept crypto, can you do just 100% crypto transaction?
Yes, we're allowed to do that as well. So if the buyer wants to pay the seller directly, absolutely. It's a little bit more risky because at that point, we are not able to provide the guarantees that we usually provide as the title company. So we can arrange for the buyer to pay the seller directly, but the risk is on them if something happens.
So you don't do it through the escrow, you just...
No, it would be, the whole point is that they send it to each other's wallet and then whatever happens, happens. So it's a little riskier. We have contracts and documentation that we prepare, but ultimately it's the risk of the buyer and the seller. That's why 90% of the crypto transactions that I have done are usually converting the money into dollars. We hold the money and then give it to the seller because then we guarantee that everybody gets paid. Otherwise, we have done a transaction where it was a direct crypto to crypto, but then they sign off a waiver saying that the agents or the title company attorneys are not responsible for any risk.
Any advices how to be prepared for the crypto transaction?
Make sure you have a good wallet. It has to be a wallet that is acceptable in the United States and Europe. It cannot be a wallet that's, an Iranian wallet or Russian or Chinese wallet because those are going to be blocked. And make sure that the money that you're going to be paying from the crypto wallet is yours. These companies are going to vet you. They're going to make sure, they're going to see what it is. And if it's somebody else's wallet, they're going to ask questions. So make sure you have paperwork or something to back up that will show you that this is actually your money because they do run checks.
Now let's talk about new law which became effective 1st of July of this year, 2023. And let's ask all the questions that we have to real estate attorney Daniel Rudoy. Daniel, can you please tell us about this new law that some countries can buy, some countries cannot buy in Florida?
Of course. I get that question asked every single day. So unfortunately, July 1st, the state of Florida, the governing body of state of Florida created this new law that restricts certain foreign principles in purchasing real estate in Florida. So the law is very broad, but in essence, it's very simple to understand. And what it does, it restricts certain people who reside in a certain place and have residency and citizenship in that place from purchasing real estate in Florida. Those countries include Venezuela, China, Cuba, Syria, North Korea, of course, and Russia. So while it's a 30-page law, in reality, it really comes down to a couple certain things. So somebody who is strictly domiciled in one of those countries that are on the list, let's say in our example, it's Russia. So if you're a citizen of Russia, you live in Russia, and you either have no visa in the United States, or let's say you have only a visitor visa in the United States, you are ultimately restricted from buying real estate in Florida because the law says that you cannot buy within 5 miles of a military base or 10 miles of any infrastructure. The problem with infrastructure is they define infrastructure as anything that's a port, an airport, a water treatment facility, electrical stations, power stations, radio stations. So really, if you look at the map of Florida, it's all of Florida. So again, very simple. If you are domiciled in the country, let's say in this situation it's Russia or China. So let's say you're a Russian or Chinese citizen. You have a Russian or Chinese passport, and you have no other legal status here. you have you just have a visitor visa. You can come visit, relax on the beach, and go home. You are ultimately restricted from buying real estate in Florida right now. Now, there are loopholes or exemptions. So, for example, you have a business visa in the United States. You have, green card doesn't count because a green card makes you a U.S. resident, so that makes no difference. But let's say you have a business visa, you have a work visa, you have an investment visa. Even if you're on an asylum case and you've been here for a very long time and you have permission to be here from the U.S. government, then there are exemptions that allow you to buy real estate here. So the exemptions are: it has to be one property, it has to be under your name, it can't be more than 2 acres, but that's a small exemption, and it cannot be next to a military base that's within 5 miles. But that's okay because there's only 3 military bases. One's down in Homestead. Nobody's buying property in Homestead. One in Palm Beach. So that's really the base of it. If you have legal status here, you can buy property.
I want to tell you an example. You're coming to United States, let's say with a tourist visa.
Yes.
And then you're changing for student visa or let's say to L1 visa on business visa.
Yes.
Can you buy property with this type of visas?
As long as the visa gets approved. So just because you applied for it doesn't mean anything. Your status has to change from a visitor visa to whatever the designation that you have. So if you apply for an L1 visa, it has to be approved and you need to get it. But then that's the business visa.
Yes.
Or if it's a long-term student visa, it has to get approved. So in that window where you're waiting, you can't. But once you get that approved, that already changes your legal status here.
Any type of visa but tourist.
It's any type of visa that allows you to stay in the United States that is not tourism.
And second very important question, does this law affect people who already own the properties here in Florida, but they still have a tourist visa, but they bought it, let's say, a year ago or 2 years ago, before this law became effective?
So the good news is, if you purchased your property before July 1st, it does not matter what your status is. You can continue owning the property. You can own it, you can rent it, you can mortgage it, you can take out a refi loan, you can do pretty much anything to it. You just cannot buy new properties. So you can continue owning the property. Mm-hmm. The state law says that you have to register your ownership with the state of Florida, but you can continue owning property. You can sell it, but if you sell it, you won't be able to buy a new one. So that's the problem for now.
Don't sell your properties if you are from these countries.
But you can certainly rent and keep it for as long as you want.
In Florida is always the best investment. Now, let's discuss very important transaction which called 1031 exchange. Everyone is asking, what is this combination of the numbers? What is it? 1031 exchange in a real estate transaction.
So 1031 exchanges is really just an IRS designation for a tax code that was created for certain investors to defer their tax gains. So you don't get rid of your capital gains taxes, but you get to defer them. And this is only possible on investment properties. So let's say you have a property that you bought a long time ago. It appreciated over time. It's worth a lot of money. You're going to be selling it, and you're probably going to get a hefty capital tax gain. If you want to avoid paying that tax gain at the moment of the sale, and you plan on reinvesting the money into a new property, it's a good idea for somebody to consider doing a 1031 exchange, because that way you are purchasing another property and you're deferring any capital gain tax you may have to the next property. And it goes on over and over and over. Now, the couple nuances is you have to find a replacement property within 45 days of your original closing.
You have to sign the contract to be under contract within 45 days, or you have to close.
You have to identify a property. So you don't have to actually sign a contract. Mm-hmm. You have 45 days to give the exchange company a list of properties you plan on buying. Mm-hmm. And then you have 180 days, which is 6 months, to close on those properties. So, you're like, I want to look at these 10 properties. You're going to identify those properties. You're going to submit a list. You're going to say, one of these 10 properties I'm going to buy. Maybe 5 of those properties you're going to buy. And then you have to buy those properties that are on the list within the 6 months period. If you find another property in 3 months, the exchange is not going to accept it. So unfortunately, you have a constraint of time, but at the same time, you're able to defer that interest or that capital gain into the new property.
How to be prepared for 1031 exchange? From my understanding, there is a third-party company who has to be involved in a transaction. It has to be agent, title company, and third-party company.
Correct. There's an exchange company. So the whole point of an exchange is that the seller's money never touches the seller. So at the closing, all the funds go to the exchange company. They hold the money, and as soon as you're ready to buy something else, they transfer the money for the closing.
And this way, they don't pay any taxes.
At the closing, correct. Or during that tax year. Now, it's really important to work with a good agent to make sure that you start lining up the properties you want to buy before you even close on the property, because 45 days is a very short window, especially in this market.
Do you have to disclose before selling your property that you're doing 1031 exchange?
No, the standard language is already in the contract. I believe it's on page 12 or 13 of the as-is contract. So a lot of agents call me and they ask me, do I need to do a 1031 addendum? You don't. There's a section in the actual contract that already discusses the fact that lets the buyer or the seller do an exchange.
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me in the comments below.